What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the top teams right now within the regulationC format. So we've done this before, but this is back like a month ago, and of course, you know, the meta changes, the meta develops, we've had more regionals as a result, and then, you know, we're getting back locals, we have premier challenges now, so yeah, now is a good time to reevaluate where we are in terms of some of the top cores and the top teams. We got Hartford Regionals coming up, you know, this coming weekend. So it's a good idea to just take a look and take a step back and just see, you know, what's really strong right now. And then from there, this will give you an idea in terms of, you know, what to look out for in terms of your team building, whether or not you want to pick up some of these teams, or maybe you might need to make some changes to a team that you already have to address some of these matchups. All right, so we're going to start with some of these different archetypes, and then, you know, just go with a general rundown of what they're supposed to do and how they work, and then what you can do to maybe just counter some of these options, or at least not really like counter, but like, of course, deal with some of these options. I never like to use the word counter, okay? I like to just use the word deal with, okay? Because it's a little bit more accurate. You can't like counter everything, okay? But it'll give you at least some kind of out in terms of trying to deal with some of these matchups. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. Okay, I actually want to start here. Normally I would start with something like one of the balanced teams or balanced archetypes, but I actually want to start here because I think this kind of archetype is actually very, very interesting, and that's the Maushold Annihilape duo. And basically, you know, they're still like very, very strong right now, and you never know what they're going to do turn one. They might go for the beat up play, they may go for the following bulk up play, they may protect one slot and, you know, deal damage with the other slot. They may just protect the Annihilape Super Fang with the Maushold, switch it out. You know, you never really know what you can really do against Maushold and Annihilape, which is why sometimes the matchup is a little bit tricky. Of course, Fluttermane can do really well, you know, especially the Choice Specs variant, because you're just able to deal a bunch of damage and potentially pick up some KOs. Now, normally the Maushold and Annihilape EVs are, you know, they're EV/calc to survive a Choice Specs Fluttermane attack, or they may just go for the Terra option just to, you know, neutralize the super effective damage hit against the Fluttermane. But you got options in terms of how you can play against Maushold and Annihilape. But this is what makes it so strong, because not only do you have to worry about Maushold and Annihilape, there's 4 other Pokemon on the team. Okay, and this is the Paul Ruiz variant, so it had Gholdengo along with Maushold, and Gholdengo Maushold is also a very interesting duo because, again, you can go for the follow me nasty plot play. And then now Gholdengo is going to be doing a lot of damage, and it has the bulk behind the Friend Guard to hide behind it, and, you know, just keep dealing a bunch of chip damage until some of these options from the back can just come in and finish the game, right? So there's that idea. And then you also have the Iron Bundle with Covert Cloak. Of course, Encore is really good. You know, some people just straight up hate Hydro Pump. It's a bad move. So they've opted for Encore, which is really, really clutch and timely in certain situations. So I like that a lot. And of course, you have the Icy Wind speed control there. And then, of course, Roaring Moon here is with the Breaking Swipe Tailwind set. I like that a lot. You know, just a little bit more speed control, make all your options relatively fast, and then you can neuter some of those physical attackers with the Stab Breaking Swipe, which is actually really, really nice. And then the Arcanine here can either be like supportive or offensive. I would imagine this is a little bit more offensive because it does have extreme speed and close combat. So it's an offensive fire type, which is really, really nice in all honesty, right? And Snarl is actually really, really underrated on Arcanine. So if you want to try a different kind of tech on Arcanine, definitely consider Snarl. It really punishes stuff like Fluttermane, some opposing Gholdengos, Iron Bundles, Chiyus. It really does hinder them quite a bit. And, you know, I really like Assault Vest Arcanine at the moment. I think with Snarl, it's just a very, very good option at the moment. But there's another way you can run Annihilape Maushold. This is just like the main one with Paul Ruiz and what he did. Then you have another one like this, similar kind of concept, of course, with Maushold Annihilape here with Gholdengo, same idea, but then you change the core a little bit. You still have the Iron Bundle, but you have the Gyarados here with the Intimidate option, and then the Tinglu for a little bit more support for the Annihilape. So now you have Intimidate and special attack damage reduction just to be able to help the Annihilape, Gholdengo, and even the Iron Bundle deal a bunch of damage and just be bulky behind some of these stat drops along with your Friend Guard support here. So, you know, similar kind of concept. And then over here, this is That's a +1 team. This is Philip Wingett's team, who's, you know, I just want to say, you know, when I first started playing Pokemon, his channel was one of the first ones I found. And then, you know, since then, you know, with these last few years, this is probably my favorite team that he's ever made, just because I think it's a little bit more competitive than some of his other squads. But I really like this kind of way of playing Maushold and Annihilape. But again, you do see the Goldango, but this time it's choice specs. And there is Tailwind not coming from the Roaring Moon, but coming from a Murkrow, which is actually really nice. And then, you know, the Garchomp over here with Swords Dance setting up behind the Maushold here. So instead of Nasty Plot Goldango, you have a Swords Dance Garchomp, which I feel like is actually really, really nice. Then you also have the Glimmora here with a Focus Sash. Remember when we made our Knoxville team? We had Maushold, Annihilape along with Glimmora, where we were able to, you know, beat up into the Glimmora and just set up a bunch of toxic debris. You know, that was a really, really cool team. And here I can see some of it come back again. And then Sludge Wave with Terra Steel Annihilape as well as Terra Steel Goldango, you know, makes a lot of sense here. I like this team. So shout outs to Phil for creating such a unique, you know, Maushold and Annihilape kind of squad. So yeah, this is just what you have to worry about. You have to worry about the Maushold and Annihilape stuff with Goldango. All right, and then, you know, the 3 other options. Usually there's an Iron Bundle, but you know, don't be surprised if you see a different trio to back up those other 3. All right, so you know, you know, Fluttermane's going to be pretty important, but again, their Annihilape and Maushold are EV/Terra to counter that. So just be ready. You know, you might have to deal like initial chip damage and then follow it up with like something else, but you have to get rid of the Maushold first, right? Because you can't get to the Annihilape if you don't get rid of the Maushold first. So definitely lead something like super aggressive where you're still able to deal a bunch of chip damage, you know, and bypass the Friend Guard. They can alter their protects, which, you know, makes things a little bit more interesting in the best of 3. But if you can get rid of the Maushold, you can get a foothold onto the Annihilape kinds of squad. So just be aware of that. But moving forward, again, you know, they can also go with the Goldango, which is another interesting option, right? But hey, if you want to pick up your own Maushold and Annihilape team, I feel like these 3 are, you know, just the way to go. You know, definitely pick up Goldango as a 3rd option, and then from there, your other 3, it's just really up to you. But I would definitely consider Iron Bundle on that team with like a 4th option. All right, so let's keep on going with the different types. Okay, next up, you'll see some of the, again, the Sun teams with like Jumpluff, Tailwind shenanigans. Of course, this is the winning team from Portland. This is Joe's team. Again, also modeled off of Justin and Santino's team. But again, the Eject Pack Torkoal with the Terraflying Chenpao really is the selling point of the squad, I would say. Like, we know what we get with Fluttermane and Great Tusk and Sun. You're enabling them with the Photosynthesis, so this way they're super aggressive. They're going to deal a lot of damage. You have the speed control with Tailwind on the Jumpluff. Encore is really clutch. So is Sleep Powder, as long as you can hit it. And then you always have like this backup Steel type within these teams, just to help them deal with other matchups that they may potentially struggle with, right? Because overall, you can see like Great Tusk and Chenpao, sometimes they don't really like the Fairy type matchup, and sometimes Kingambit can really put pressure on opposing Fluttermanes, especially with an Assault Vest for that matter. But this is not the only kind of Sun team you'll see. You'll also see, you know, Murkrow Sun like this, where again Murkrow is enabling the Great Tusk and Fluttermane with Sunny Day rather than using the Torkoal. And then the other 3 options are up for grabs. This one has the Goldango as the Steel type option rather than the Kingambit here. But again, you have the Amoonguss and Gyarados here to really support that kind of combo. And then you also have another Flying type in the Gyarados where you can click Earthquake next to it. So yeah, you know, another good way of running Sun. Sometimes you might see Dragonite Chenpao on these kinds of teams, just because, again, you know, with Dragonite being a Flying type, you're able to Earthquake next to it. And then again, with the Great Tusk, with the Dragonite is also able to Earthquake next to that, as well as a Terraflying Chenpao, as we said, which is what you saw over here. So, you know, just different kinds of variants, mix and match, but you'll either see Murkrow Sun or the Jumpluff Torkoal Sun as the 2 variants. So again, very hyper aggressive, you know, kinds of teams that are really meant to do a bunch of damage as well as have a little bit of control, especially this one, because, you know, there is an Amoonguss and Gyarados over here. So just be aware of their hyper aggression. And then, you know, you could probably even match that with your own Tailwind shenanigans too. All right. So again, if you're trying to pick up Sun as well, so, you know, you can either use this variant or you can use Murkrow Sun, along with like a Chenpao or a Dragonite on some of these teams. All right, let's keep going. Okay, the next kinds of teams that you're going to see in your upcoming regionals and tournaments are these Dondozo Glimmora teams. And a lot of times they're either having, you know, 2 special attackers and a Dragonite on their team, or they have something like this where they don't have the Dragonite and just have like a whole bunch of special attackers. But again, the idea is that Glimmora fits in relatively well on these Dondozo teams because, again, you know, with the Toxic Debris shenanigans, you're just able to set up the poison damage over time, chip things, and then Dondozo can come in the back and finish things off. And then, you know, likely you might have used up way too many resources to remove the initial starting duo, and then you don't have as much left for the Dondozo stuff. And a lot of them are, of course, you know, Terra Grass with Terra Blast. This is just to combat stuff like, you know, Iron Bundle and Palafin. You might still see the occasional Terra Steel, but I feel like right now they're still like Terra Grass, and some of them are even unaware for that matter. Yep, here's one of them that's actually unaware. But the whole idea is, you know, you have Iron Bundle and Chiyu. Sometimes these Chiyus are Focus Sash, which is actually kind of nice, you know, because they're enabling more damage coming out from the Iron Bundle and the Glimmora, which makes a lot of sense. The Glimmoras are usually like Assault Vest variants on these kinds of Dondozo teams. So they're able to take a little bit more special attack damage than normal, of course. And they have a bunch of coverage moves, like with the Mortal Spin, Earth Power, Power Gem. That's relatively standard. The Sludge Bomb, you know, is sometimes there. Sometimes they opt for another move, like Energy Ball, like a grass move. So that makes a lot of sense. But sometimes these Dragonites also have Tailwind instead of like Protect. So there's different variants, but more or less, you're going to see either Dragonite plus 3 special attack homies, or just Glimmora plus 3 other special attack homies, right? So again, if you're trying to like use Dondozo as well, you know, you got to go the Glimmora route, and you got to go with some of these special attackers along with the Glimmora idea. And now whether or not you want to use Dragonite is up to you, but I feel like these are the 2 types of successful Dondozo teams, you know, at the given moment with Glimmora. Either they have the Dragonite or they don't have the Dragonite. There's another one, but we'll talk about that one in the miscellaneous section of this video, where we take a look at some of those miscellaneous teams that, you know, you can still occasionally see, and they have proven results, but they're still like not as common as some of these other teams that you're going to be able to see. But again, this is again something that you need to be watching out for. So Dondozo is still something that you have to respect and check. So either it's something like Haze on your team from a Qianpao or a Palafin, and Amoonguss with Clear Smog. Maybe you have a Gyarados to, you know, Intimidate, cycle it if the Dondozo doesn't have the right ability. So, you know, different ways to go about it. You also have your Ruined Pokemon like Iron Bundle plus a Chiyu to really, you know, do a bunch of special attack damage, because, you know, you're weakening Dondozo with the Ruined Pokemon, or you can just Parasong it. You know, that's just another way of going about it. You know, if you have that option on your team, that makes sense. You could set up Leech Seed stuff, you know, and then just rely on chip damage over time. I feel like sometimes that's a little bit too slow, but it is another way to go about it. All right, so moving on with the next type of archetype. Okay, and of course the most popular archetype at the moment, we have the balanced kind of teams. And remember, when we made that whole video on the different kinds of balanced teams that you can make, we came up with like, I believe 11, 12, or 13 different variations, and they're all relatively successful depending on what you, the player, want to play. But as an example right now, you know, you have Baxcalibur balance, where you have, again, this Dragon Fairy Steel combination with a Fire Water Grass Core with the Arcanine, Amoonguss, and Palafin. But sometimes you don't even have Terra Steel on your Fluttermane, you just have like straight up offense with your Fluttermane, like this example over here. But the Tinglu, again, is also here, along with the Arcanine, just to neuter a bunch of damage and just have, you know, the Palafin and Baxcalibur and or Fluttermane just come in and, you know, just deal a bunch of damage behind all that damage reduction. That's one way to do it. Then you also have this one where you don't have a dragon at all, but instead you're opting for something like Iron Hands, and you're relying on the damage of something like, you know, Fluttermane and Chiyu behind the redirection support from the Amoonguss and the Gyarados Intimidate drops. And then, you know, the Iron Bundle, which is again rising a lot, can do a bunch of damage with the Chiyu. And I also want to pinpoint the Iron Bundle and Iron Hands. These are 2 Pokemon that were still like pretty well used in the previous month, but they took a bit of a drop, but now they're rising again just because of how well they do into the rest of the meta, right? So definitely consider using a lot of Iron Hands and a lot of Iron Bundle. They do relatively well at the moment. And then if you can couple that with something like an Amoonguss, you know, with redirection support, that's actually really, really nice. I like Gyarados, Amoonguss, and Iron Hands. You know, you get Intimidate, Fake Out, and Redirection. You know, 3 important VGC team building condiments, as I like to say, that can really make your team do relatively well against other teams, just because you have that slight edge over them that they may or may not have, right? So that's another kind of balance team with no dragon. Then you have something like this. Again, Roaring Moon balance. Again, back to the dragon idea. This is our team. We made a rental code for this at the beginning of the month, and it's still there. It does relatively well, but again, you're relying on the damage of Fluttermane and Chiyu, along with the support from Gyarados and the Amoonguss, and the Iron Hands and the Roaring Moon are your physical attackers. You can, click Fake Out and set up a Dragon Dance, for example, or, lead with the Amoonguss and then set up a Dragon Dance that way, or just rely on more speed control with the Gyarados with Thunder Wave, neutering damage with the Intimidate drops. You could even do like Amoonguss Nasty Plot shenanigans with Chiyu. Just multiple different ways of trying to, use a Roaring Moon balance team like this. Sometimes you'll see the Tinglu instead of the Iron Hands, but on this kind of team, I definitely like the Tinglu, especially, the Iron Hands, especially with the steel coverage of Heavy Slam, just to do well against like opposing Fluttermane. So this is another way of doing it. Then you have this kind of team with like Garchomp balance. A lot of them will have like either Garchomp, Corviknight, and Fluttermane for your Dragon Fairy Steel Core, and then Gyarados, Chiyu, and the Amoonguss for your Fire Water Grass Core. This is another way of running a balanced team. This is again also another rental code on the channel that we made earlier in the month. And again, you may not see like these exact sets, but you'll definitely see like the same 6. All right, so definitely watch out in terms of like maybe you run into like a balance mirror where like you have a Roaring Moon balance team versus a Garchomp balance team. Those are very entertaining matches, by the way, just to see how different balanced teams go up against each other, especially with all the different options that they have, especially how they're built. So I'm always excited to see, mirror matches, just because there might be like 1 or 2 Pokemon differences, and then like the sets are like also different. So that's exciting to me. But this is the idea behind these balanced teams. So definitely consider, what you're aiming for in terms of how you want to, disrupt these teams. But generally, like hyper offensive teams can put on a pressure immediately, because sometimes balanced teams, they take a little bit of time to get going. They can, again, neuter damage, which is what some of these teams are meant to do. But, if they don't position well, then they just can't get the ball rolling. And some of these Tailwind hyper offensive teams can just kind of steamroll them, honestly. So just be aware of that. But other than that, these are always like relatively nice and safe teams to play. There's no like unwinnable matchup for that matter. It's just a matter of like your positional play and using the 4 options that you want to bring to a match. All right, let's take a look at other stuff. All right, next up are the exciting snow teams that we've seen on the rise as of late. So if you don't know how the snow teams work, it's of course revolving around the Abomasnow and the Iron Bundle. Sometimes you'll see the occasional Baxcalibur and the Chien-Pao, just because they get a nice defense bonus from the snow. But other than that, you'll see the most common Iron Bundle and the Iron Hands. The Iron Bundle and the Abomasnow. So with the Aurora Veil, you're making your team a little bit more bulkier, of course. And then, the Iron Bundle is something that definitely appreciates screens, because the defense is going to be good in snow, but then you add screens on top of that, and it's physically very hard to break. And then this special defense will definitely appreciate screens, because 60 special defense isn't all that great. We tried to compensate that with our snow team when we had Assault Vest, but you can definitely be more aggressive like this with the choice specs. And of course, this 4 attacks over here is relatively standard here. You can even opt for Blizzard spam, right? So there is Blizzard from the Iron Bundle and the Abomasnow, so don't get frozen. If you do, oh well. And then some of these teams have Bronzong on it, right? And with Bronzong, you're able to set up Trick Room for speed control, and then you're just able to go for hard-hitting body presses. They also get access to Safeguard, so this way, you can't put things to sleep, can't burn things. Status, is just going to get a little bit harder. And then, the Azumarill on these type of teams is actually relatively interesting. They're just able to put on a bunch of pressure behind all these screens and do relatively well behind the bulk that you get. So this way, its physical damage can just keep chipping away until, things die, because Azumarill's bulk is actually pretty good. Like 80 defense and 80 special defense. It's actually pretty nice. So you add screens on top of that and the support for Arcanine and Tinglu, and all of a sudden Azumarill is actually kind of chilling, right? So, just be aware of that. If you consider Wolf Glick's team, again, he also had a Bronzong over here. And again, it's also revolving around the Iron Bundle Abomasnow. And then from here, you have a little bit more aggressive options with like the Fluttermane and the Iron Hands. So again, 2 Pokemon that definitely appreciate screens, especially the Fluttermane being it so physically weak. but now you add Aurora Veil to it, and now, you know, it's able to ruin some of your damage calcs and survive and just deal a bunch of damage, you know, because you have choice specs here. And like I said, the Bronzong here with Trick Room and Safeguard does relatively well here. So this is actually a pretty cool snow team that you might see with Bronzong. So shout outs to Wolfclick and of course this person over here. And then you have another kind of snow team. This is the Nick Navarre snow team, where you have a Dragon Fairy Steel coupled with the snow idea. So we also did that. We had Corviknight and Salamence with Earthquake, you know, that kind of idea, along with the Fluttermane within the snow team. But Nick Navarre said, we're going to take that concept and just make it a little bit better by just going with straight up Dragonite, Kingambit, and Fluttermane. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Because look at this team. You have Great Tusk here hiding behind screens, right? And now you have the Choice Scarf. So you don't really need Tailwind per se. And now you can just Earthquake next to your own Dragonite over here, which makes a lot of sense. And of course, the Kingambit is just for other options that the team can't really deal with. But again, Kingambit behind screen is also very, very hard to remove. It's already bulky enough as it is, but now you hide it behind screens and it can do relatively well here. So makes a lot of sense. Then of course, we already know what the Fluttermane can do, so nothing else needs to be said over there. But again, Booster Energy Fluttermane just does a lot of damage. And normally you would see Great Tusk and Fluttermane in Sun, but this is another cool creative idea to just put it behind Snow. So definitely you'll see this team a little bit. And in the tours, in the online tours after the Portland Regionals, I've seen many different players use this 6. So either they got access to the team or they just used the same 6 and just made their own EV spread. So either way, be prepared for the snow teams. Be prepared for Abomasnow and Iron Bundle. Okay, next up is the Orthworm team. You know, again, popularized by David Kutesh. And I've seen a bunch of these variants appear on online ladder tours after the EUIC, which is where we first saw David Kutesh's team. Then we saw the Sao Paulo Regionals from Brazil. A lot of different people use this, you know, Orthworm kind of idea. But basically, again, if you don't know what Orthworm does by now, you have steel coverage for your Fluttermane matchup, of course. Then you just have, you know, Iron Defense Body Press plays against the Ruined Pokemon because they're all weak to fighting types. And then you're able to, you know, click Shed Tail, you know, and get a free substitute and switch out into, you know, something like a Chien-Pao or Dragonite, or even like Choice Band Tinglu. But again, you get more synergy here because you're able to click Earthquake from your Dragonite next to Orthworm. You have Earthquake Tinglu with Choice Band dealing a bunch of damage, healing the Orthworm. Even Gyarados here has some speed control with Bulldoze. So you have that option as well. But again, the whole idea is to just click a bunch of ground spread moves, heal up the Orthworm, and just keep dealing a bunch of damage behind, you know, potentially Shed Tail, for example, right? So you'll definitely see someone using this Earthworm kind of idea. Sometimes I've seen some people take out the Gyarados and just put Arcanine over here, and it's like Bulldoze Arcanine. I don't know if that's better or worse, but again, it is another adaptation to it. So, you know, just something to be aware of. But again, if you're interested in trying to use Orthworm, you know, definitely pick up David Kutesh's team and consider doing it because it's a very fun team. It's different than it's different in that you have a niche Pokemon doing relatively well against like 5 other monsters. So we always like teams like that. All right, so just, you know, give it a go if you haven't done so already. It's really, really good. Okay, next up, I want to go into like some other miscellaneous teams that are, you know, somewhat uncommon, but common enough where like you'll see like a couple of them, especially in like a big regional. And just to cover my bases here, these are just like some of the more outlier teams, but not like completely out there, but still like common enough where, you know, you can definitely see them appearing in your tours. All right, and this is another one of them. This is like Garchomp Talonflame stuff. So I don't know if you'll be running like Choice Band Garchomp, for example, but at the very least, you'll see Garchomp, Talonflame, plus some Steel type, whether it's Golding or Kingambit, and then you'll see like Fluttermane, Chiyu, and then either like an Amoonguss over here or like an Iron Bundle, for example, right? This is another one of those balanced teams that are not like super balanced, but again, just like still a little bit more aggressive with the Talonflame stuff. So definitely see Talonflame. Sometimes you might even see like Great Tusk in this Garchomp slot, but it really just depends on what they want to do with the balanced kind of team that they have. But definitely Garchomp Talonflame is still a thing. Then over here you have Stony J, or in other words, Stone Journer. So be aware of Stone Journer teams because again, you're getting additional damage because of Power Spot. You know, things can be built relatively bulky, right? And then they're just going to rely on the Power Spot to compensate for their damage. So this way they're able to stay on the field a little bit longer and then just keep dealing like, really big damage. And you know, you can just imagine stuff like, you know, Chien-Pao Stonejourner, right, is just doing so much, especially this kind of team, you know, with Life Orb Chien-Pao over here. So definitely be aware of Stonejourner teams. I think you're gonna see a couple in some tours. And again, I've looked at like some of these online tournaments, and there's always like a couple Stonejourner teams, right? It's just like people like using it. Then another one is this one with Fergraph. So there's always like Fergraph enjoyers, Fergraph lovers. I think it does relatively well with Iron Hands. So this is Ryan Bailey's team from Portland. But I feel like if you want to make your own Fergraph team, I feel like you got to go with like Fergraph and Iron Hands, and then just, you know, run a Trick Room kind of set. And then your 4 other options really just depends on you. But definitely Fergraph Iron Hands is actually really nice. So just be aware of those. You know, and the whole idea with Armatail is, you know, you're just stopping priority in general, which is really good against like Dragonite Chien-Pao teams in general, especially like Palafin stuff as well. So just be aware of that. You'll definitely see a couple. And then Garganical teams, right? So, you know, sometimes they may vary in terms of their 5th and 6th option, but I always see like Fluttermane, Tinglu, Amoonguss, and then Garganical. And then sometimes this water slot is like Gyarados, for example, instead of Palafin. And sometimes I'll see a Dragon type like Roaring Moon instead of an Arcanine for that matter. But the whole idea is still relatively the same, where you still have like this endgame option with Garganical, and then you just have like a balanced team, you know, with your other 4 or 5 options, right? So this is one example. So just still respect the Garganical matchup. I feel like it's still very good. I always see a couple in Top Cut, which means it's a very solid and consistent Pokemon, right? So if you're trying to also think of something to use, definitely pick up Garganical, because not too many people are preparing for it. You know, I feel like others are just, you know, focused on trying to, you know, counterbalance teams and whatnot. But some of these niche options are going to be really strong in some of these tournament plays. So I always want to, you know, advise people, like, if you really want to quote unquote flip the meta upside its head, use one of those B tier niche Pokemon that not too many people prepare for, but can still do relatively well, just because of the options and tools it can give your team. But because people are not really prepared for it or haven't really experienced play against it, you can really turn a tournament around in your favor for that matter. All right, Orthworm is a perfect example. All right, as we keep going here, like here's another one. Ceruledge is actually really good. I really like this trio of Ceruledge, Gyarados, and Tinglu. I feel like that's always going to be really good, depending on how you, the viewer, want to play it. But then this Fluttermane, Glimmora, Amoonguss is a very common archetype. This is a Sash Glimmora over here, but the idea is like Ceruledge is really good against like Gyarados and Arcanine stuff. You're just, especially when it has Clear Amulet. But again, the Arcanine just struggles relatively well against it because of Flash Fire. You might either go like Terra Steel or Terra Grass. So you always have options there. But again, you know, Bitter Blade plus Bulk Up plays are going to do a bunch of damage. Shadow Snake is really good against opposing Floodmains, especially if Ceruledge is paired with Chien-Pao. But again, just hiding behind the support from Gyarados and Tinglu, Ceruledge is able to do relatively well. Keep recovering HP and, you know, just win potential endgames. And, you know, Fluttermane and Glimmora, they're just going to put on a bunch of damage early on. You know, just dealing with corrosion damage. I feel like this should be like Hex Fluttermane in essence, right? But it's not. Okay. So we covered Ceruledge teams, Garganical, Ferrograph teams, Stonejourner teams. Oh yeah, this one. This one was, again, we mentioned this earlier. So like Sand teams are also still viable along with Sun teams. Okay. But I always see this team, right? I believe this was like Cobalt's team that he released early on. It's like the Sand duo with Dondozo Tatsugiri, and then you have the Trick Room engine with like Indeedee and Armarouge, right? And you don't expect Indeedee Armarouge right now because, you know, they just don't really do well against all the dark types running around. Ice Spinner is a thing, so Indeedee's terrain gets removed, and Armarouge sometimes is a little bit difficult to play against some of those dark types. So in that sense, yeah, this duo might not be so great, but then look at the other 4, and then, you know, you have to deal with Lycanroc and Tyranitar, especially Choice Band Tyranitar is really strong. And this is the Howl idea. Again, we made a rental using Howl Lycanroc, so it's really nice to see it here. And then of course, Dondozo Tatsugiri, you already know what you're getting over here. And you can even howl your Dondozo, right? Because you can lead Lycanroc Dondozo, you can howl it, and then switch out into Tatsugiri. Now all of a sudden Dondozo has like a +1 Howl boost on top of its Commander boost, which is actually really cool. So definitely watch out for this kind of team. I see it all the time. Okay, so definitely be on the lookouts for it. And then lastly, you'll get the occasional, where is it? Yeah, right here, the occasional rain team, okay? Rain has not gone away at all. It's always been around since the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, and it's no difference here. So this was Gavin Michaels' Portland team. And again, it's just all about Pelipper, you know, with some aggressive water option, whether it be a Azumarill over here or Palafin. And then sometimes these teams run like Baxcalibur in the rain, Dragonite in the rain, or like some aggressive steel type, like either Goldengo or King Gambit. But I always feel like rain teams, they really need Iron Hands, just because Iron Bundle kind of runs through. Because without Iron Hands, look at this. Iron Bundle can just beat the Pelipper, it beats the Amoonguss, it beats the Azumarill, it beats the Arcanine over here. Alright, so you really need something to help you against that matchup, and the Iron Hands is just one really nice way to go about it. And it's also interesting to note that Gavin Michaels did not have Tailwind on his Pelipper. It's just mainly a Hurricane user in the rain, Hydro Pump with Wide Guard. So interesting that there is no Tailwind there. I think he did like a little report on it on Audie's channel. I'm not sure. I'll have to check that. But again, you'll always see rain teams. Sometimes they'll have Scizor here. I really like Scizor on rain teams. I did see it a couple times in some other tours. So it's nice to see that Scizor is still thriving relatively well, whether it be in rain or not. But again, you will see at least 1 or 2 rain teams. So, you know, just don't be surprised if you do see it. I feel like it's the weakest of the 4 weather teams, but all 4 weather teams are viable, and despite rain being the lowest of the 4. Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So let me know what you think of some of these top teams that we covered, and if there's anything that we missed. But again, if you're going to a regional, or if you're playing in, you know, future online tournaments, or if you're going to a local, these are some of the teams that you're going to be likely to see. So just be on the lookout for them and prep well. Okay, and if you need help with that, we do offer coaching on the channel in terms of team building. So if you need a squad to attend these regionals or to attend these tournaments, we do offer team building on the channel. So take a look at the video description, take a look at the comment section. There is a pinned comment as well as a link that you can click where you can sign up for a tier 3 sub, which will give you access to the team building coaching session. And then from there, you can message me on Discord. And then from there, we plan a one-on-one Discord call where we sit down, we build the team that you need. We show you how to do the EVs, you know, from scratch. And then we explain how certain matchups works. And then if we have time, we even test out the team a little bit. All right. So if that's something you're interested in, sign up for tier 3, take a look. And from there, you know, hopefully you're satisfied with the squad you've gotten. And, you know, just in general, we've had some people top cut a lot of different tournaments with our teams, especially regionals. So, you know, that's always nice to see when people do well with the squads that we built them during the coaching sessions. All right. But we'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.